In 1933, the government itself told American housewives how to stretch 1 pound of hamburger into a week of suppers. They printed the pamphlets. They ran the programs. And the families who followed them came through the worst years this country ever saw, fed and standing. Then, somewhere along the way, the very same government that taught folks to feed themselves quietly stopped reminding them how, and a whole world of plain, proven know-how slipped out of the kitchens of America. I am Earl Dean. Today I'm going to count down 35 of those Depression-era tricks, the ones nobody seems eager for you to remember. Stay with me to the end, because the last one was so powerful they passed laws against it in some places, and it is the one I most want you to carry away. Sit with me a while. One thing before I begin. There is far more of this old know-how than fits in any one video. So I gathered the whole of it into a book at my website, earldeanbook.com, for the folks who want the long version. 99 methods all in one place. I will not mention it again. If you want it, you know where to look. Now the 35. Number 35. The newspaper in the icebox. Before the electric refrigerator, folks kept food cold with a block of ice in a wooden box, and every hour that block melted was money gone. So they lined the inside walls with 3 or 4 sheets of newspaper pressed flat. The paper trapped a layer of still air, and still air is one of the finest insulators there is, and it could stretch a block of ice near a full extra day. A newspaper cost 2 cents. The ice cost a quarter. That is the same trick trapped air that every cooler and every insulated wall still uses today. Number 34. The bacon grease jar. Every careful kitchen had a tin or a jar at the back of the stove, and into it went every drop of grease, poured off hot through a bit of cloth to strain the bits out. Strained clean like that, it kept for weeks with no cold at all. And that grease was the cooking fat for everything. The eggs, the cornbread, the beans, the pie crust. You bought it once in the bacon, and it did the work of butter at half the price. My mother's jar sat by her stove her whole life. Number 33. White vinegar for the whole house. Before the shelf was full of bottles, each promising to clean one thing, a 10-cent gallon of plain vinegar cleaned near all of it. Cut half and half with water. It did the windows, the counters, the floors. It softened the wash. It cleared a slow drain. It took the rust off a tool soaked overnight. And here is the honest truth of it, confirmed since by the universities. A vinegar solution kills the better part of the everyday germs on a surface. Now, I will be square with you. It is not a hospital disinfectant. It will not kill every last dangerous thing. So for the truly foul job, there is a place for bleach. But for the daily wiping down of a kitchen, that 10-cent gallon does what a cabinet of costly bottles does. Number 32. The flour sack dress. The flour came in good cotton sacks, and the mothers noticed that cloth was too sturdy to waste. So they made it into dresses, shirts, towels, curtains. And the flour companies, being no fools, caught on and began printing their sacks in flowers and plaids and stripes. So a woman would choose her flour by the cloth she wanted to sew. A child could go to school in a flour sack dress stitched so careful no one ever knew. 49 pounds of flour came wrapped in a whole garment if you had the eye to see it. Number 31. Dandelion greens for the table. Before folks poisoned their lawns to keep them green and empty, the dandelion was supper, not a weed. The young leaves, picked before the plant flowers, while they are still tender and only a little bitter, wilted in a little bacon grease with a splash of vinegar. And they are no poor man's afterthought either. Dandelion greens carry more vitamin A than a carrot, and a good deal of calcium besides. The one honest caution: pick them only from ground you know has had no chemicals sprayed on it. Not the roadside, not a treated lawn. From clean ground, it is free food that plants and waters itself. Number 30. The potato water. When she boiled the potatoes, she never poured that cloudy water down the drain. She kept it. The starch in it fed the bread yeast and made a lighter, softer loaf than plain water ever could. And it thickened a gravy without a bit of extra flour. You already pulled that goodness out of the potato when you boiled it. Most folks pour it straight down the sink and never know. Number 29. The cardboard in the shoe. when the soul wore clean through, and in those years it wore through fast. A child cut a piece of cardboard from a box and slipped it inside the shoe. It covered the hole, kept the wet and the road out, and bought a few more weeks before there was money for the cobbler. It was no permanent fix. It softened in the rain and wore through again. But it kept a child in school and a man at his work when there was nothing to spare, and there is dignity in that. Let me stop here a moment for the first of 3 pauses, because I want you to notice something. Look back at these first few. The newspaper was already read. The grease was already bought. The vinegar did the work of a dozen bottles. Every one of these took a thing you already had and made it do more. That is the whole secret under all 35, and I want you holding it as we go. These were not the tricks of poor and beaten people. They were the tricks of clever ones. Number 28, the root cellar. That hole dug into the cool of the hillside was the finest food keeper a family could own. A few feet down, the earth holds steady near 50 to 60 degrees the year round, cool enough to keep potatoes, apples, turnips, and the jars of canned goods for months, with no electric at all. A good cellar costs nothing but the labor of digging it. And here is what nobody tells you. When the power goes out in a storm, your refrigerator becomes an expensive box full of spoiling food. The cellar does not care. It kept right on working through every blackout there ever was. Number 27, soap from scraps. The careful household saved its cooking fat and its trimmings, and combined that rendered fat with lye to make its own soap. Enough in one batch to last a family months, for next to nothing. Now I will give you the honest caution, because this one has teeth. Lye is caustic. It will burn your skin and blind an eye. And soap making must be done with care, with gloves and goggles and good sense, away from the children. Done wrong, it is dangerous. Done right, the way it was done in every farmhouse for centuries, it makes a fine soap, for the cost of what you are going to throw away. Number 26, eggs kept in water glass. Before there was reliable cold, a woman kept her spring eggs for the winter by setting them, fresh and unwashed, down into a crock of water mixed with a thing called sodium silicate, sold cheap at the hardware store as water glass. It sealed up the pores of the shell and kept the air and the spoilage out, and the eggs stayed good 6 to 9 months at room temperature. The hens lay heavy in spring and quit in winter, so this carried the family's eggs right across the cold months. And here is a telling thing. During the war, the government itself recommended water glassing in its guides. After the war, when the refrigerator companies were advertising hard, the government quietly stopped mentioning it. Number 25, bean soup on a dime. A pound of dried navy beans, soaked overnight and simmered all the day with a ham bone begged from the butcher, an onion, and whatever was wilting in the box, fed a family of 6 for 3 days on about a dime. By supper it was thick enough to stand a spoon in. With a wedge of cornbread beside it, that was a whole and honest meal. And the bone, the butcher near, gave away for nothing. Number 24, honey on a wound. When a child got a cut or a scrape, the grandmother did not reach for a store-bought ointment, for there was none and no money for it. She smeared raw honey on the wound and wrapped it in clean cloth. And here is the part that will surprise you, because the doctors mocked this for years as old folly. They were wrong. Honey is naturally antibacterial. It holds so little water and is so acid that germs cannot live in it. And it is not just folklore now. The year 2007, the FDA approved medical-grade honey for treating wounds, and hospitals use it today on burns and stubborn sores. Your great-grandmother was not being superstitious. She was ahead of the doctors by 100 years. Number 23, mending and darning. A shirt with a hole was not thrown out. It was patched. A sock worn at the heel was not tossed. It was darned over a wooden egg, the thread woven back and forth across the gap until the sock was whole. A man's work shirt might carry 4 patches before it was finally retired to the rag basket. Nobody felt shame in it, for every family did the same. We now throw away better than 80 pounds of cloth a person every year, and the industry that taught us to stop mending is the very one now selling us thrift at a premium. Number 22. The second brew of coffee. Coffee was dear, so the grounds did not get one use and go in the bin. They were dried on a sheet and brewed again, sometimes with a small scoop of fresh mixed in to lift them. The second pot was weaker, but it was still coffee, and it stretched a quarter pound near 3 weeks. And the spent grounds after that went to the garden to feed the soil, or onto the icy step for footing in winter. Nothing got just one use. Number 21. Lard biscuits. When the cupboard was near bare, a woman could still set hot bread on the table with 3 things: flour, lard, and a little buttermilk, or even just water, and a pinch of soda. The cold lard cut into the flour, the dough patted out, and cut with the rim of a glass. 12 minutes in a hot oven, and out came golden, flaky biscuits for pennies a pan. And the lard made layers of flaky steam that the factory shortening never could match. Bakers today pay dear for fancy butter trying to get back what lard did for nothing. Now the second pause, and here's where it gets uncomfortable, because I want you to notice the pattern in who stopped teaching these. The grease jar, the homemade soap, the water-glassed eggs, the mended shirt. One by one, a campaign came along to make each one look backward, or unsanitary, or beneath a modern family, right about the time somebody had a product to sell in its place. The grease jar gave way to the can of shortening, the homemade soap to the factory bar, the bean pot to the can of soup. The knowledge did not fade because it stopped working. It faded because there was money in replacing it. Number 20. Reusing the bathwater. In homes with no running water, and that was near half the country and the countryside, bath night meant heating water on the stove and filling a tub in the kitchen, and the whole family used it in turn, the cleanest, first down to the dirtiest last. And even then, the water was not done. It went out onto the garden after. Every gallon was hauled and heated by hand. And you do not pour that kind of labor down a drain. We now use 80 gallons a person in a day. That family used 20 in a week and found a second use for every drop. Number 19. Bread pudding from the heels. When the bread went stale, and with no preservatives, it went stale fast. The hard heels were not garbage. They were tomorrow's dessert. Soaked in eggs, milk, and a little sugar. Baked till the custard set and the top went gold, with a handful of raisins or a shake of cinnamon. And the children begged for it. A whole sweet for a nickel, made of the very thing most folks now throw away. Number 18. Home canning. The family canned the whole summer. Tomatoes, beans, peaches, pickles, the lot. A pressure canner cost a few dollars and lasted decades. The jars cost a dime and were used year on year. And a woman could put up a whole garden for under $5 and feed her family vegetables all winter. Now here's where I must be honest with you. More honest than the folks who just say it is all safe. Canning done right is safe and has fed this country for generations. But canning done wrong, especially low-acid foods like beans and meat canned without a proper pressure canner, can grow a poison called botulism that you cannot see, smell, or taste, and it is deadly. So I am not telling you to wing it. I am telling you to learn the real method, the right times and pressures, from a trusted modern guide, and then it is as safe as it ever was. The danger was never the canning. The danger is canning without learning it first. Number 17. The twice used everything. I will gather a few small ones here, for they share one spirit. The string off a parcel, wound onto a ball for next time. The brown paper bag, folded flat and kept. The rubber bands, the buttons, the glass jars that became the drinking glasses, and the storage and the canning vessels. The bent nail straightened on an anvil to use again. None of it was waste, because in a careful house, the word waste meant something close to sin. Number 16. Twice-baked, hard-dried bread for keeping. When there was more bread than could be eaten before it turned, it was sliced thin and dried hard in a low oven, what some folks called a rusk, and kept for weeks that way without molding. Softened in soup or coffee or milk, it came back to use. Bread was work and flour was money, and a household that let bread mold was letting money mold. Number 15. Sour milk in the batter. When the milk soured on the counter, and with no cold it soured fast in summer, it did not get poured out. It got baked. Soured milk meets baking soda and makes the bubbles that lift a pancake or a biscuit light. With a tang and a tenderness sweet milk never gives. It went into the cake, too, where the acid deepened the chocolate. The buttermilk we now pay a premium for is near the same thing your great-grandmother got for free by simply letting the milk sit a day. Number 14. The hay box. This is the slow cooker your great-grandmother had 90 years before they sold you one with a cord on it. She brought a pot of beans or stew to a hard boil on the stove, then set it, covered, down into a wooden box packed tight with hay or crumpled paper or old blankets. The insulation held the heat in, and the food cooked on for hours, with no more fuel burned. Beans put in at breakfast were tender by noon, on the strength of that one boil. It cut the cooking fuel by the better part. The government promoted the hay box in both world wars to save fuel, and after the companies that sold the fuel had no interest in reminding you. You can build one today with a cardboard box and old towels, and it works exactly as it did. Now the third pause, and I will say the quiet part plain. Notice how often the government itself was in on these until it wasn't. It taught the hamburger stretch. It recommended the water-glassed eggs. It promoted the hay box. It begged folks to plant gardens. And then, when prosperity came, and there were industries to feed, the same official voice went quiet on every one of them. And in a few cases, the rules turned clean around to discourage what was once encouraged. That is the grain of truth under this video's title. But hear me plain, for I will not sell you a lie, even a flattering one. This was not a smoke-filled room of men plotting against you. It is simpler and sadder than that. There is no money in teaching a family to feed and clean and mend itself. There's a great deal of money in selling it, the replacement for every one of these. So the teaching stopped, and the selling began, and a way of life slipped away one forgotten trick at a time. Number 13. The everything from the pig and the bone broth. When a family had meat, nothing of it was lost. The bones and the scraps and the trimmings went into a pot of water and simmered slow into a rich stock. The backbone of soups and gravies for the week. You already bought that nourishment when you bought the meat. Most folks now simmer it down the drain. Number 12. Homemade cough syrup. When a child took sick and a doctor was a luxury beyond reach, the grandmother made a syrup of honey and lemon, with a small spoon of whiskey for the grown ones to help them sleep. The honey coated the throat and quieted the cough. The lemon gave a little vitamin. And here is the proof. For this is not just a tale. A study out of Penn State in 2007 found that honey calmed a child's nighttime cough better than the common over-the-counter medicine did. But mind this hard caution, and I mean it. Honey is only for children over 1 year old. Never, ever give honey to a baby under a year, for it can cause a deadly sickness in the very young. And the whiskey was never for children at all. For a grown person or an older child, honey and lemon. Nothing less, nothing more. Number 11. The windowsill regrowing. She did not buy green onions every week. She bought them once, used the green tops, and set the white root ends in a jar of water on the sill. And in days, new green shoots came up. The same with the bottom of the celery, the heart of the lettuce, the eyes of the potato. A second harvest from the very scraps bound for the bin. Number 10. Stretching the meat. This is where we began. The famous 1 pound of hamburger made to feed the family for a week. The trick was that the meat was never the meal. It was the seasoning for the meal. A little browned and stirred through a great pot of beans, or rice, or macaroni and onions, or stretched with breadcrumbs and oats into a loaf. A pound of meat carried a dozen servings when it flavored the dish instead of filling the plate. Number 9. Drippings and gravy as a meal. The fat and drippings left in the pan after cooking were not wiped out. They were the start of supper. A spoon of flour stirred in, a little milk or water, and you had a gravy to pour over bread or potatoes or biscuits, a hot and filling meal made of what most folks scrape into the trash. Number 8. The kitchen garden in every corner. Not a tidy hobby plot, but food in every spare foot of dirt. Tomatoes along the warm south wall, beans climbing the fence, squash sprawling under the corn, potatoes in every gap. At the height of it, the home gardens of this country grew a great share of all the vegetables eaten in it. A small, well-worked garden could grow 1,000 of today's dollars in food for a few dollars of seed. Number 7. Seed saved from the best. The careful gardener never bought all her seed again each year. She let the best bean dry on the vine, kept the seed of the finest tomato, dried it, stored it, and planted it next spring. Free seed, year on year, and better suited to her own ground with each passing season, because she saved from what grew best right there. That is 10,000 years of how folks fed themselves, and it was near forgotten in 2 generations. Number 6. The cold pantry and the spring house. Where a family had a cold running spring, they built a little house over it and set the milk and the butter and the cream down in the cold water, and it kept fresh through the heat of summer with no ice and no electric, just the cold the earth gave for free. And where there was no spring, the cool north corner of a deep pantry did a humbler version of the same. Number 5. Buying used and trading for it. The household was furnished, the children clothed, the kitchen stocked, near entirely from the second hand, the church sale, the auction, the swap with a neighbor. And there was no shame in it, because everyone did it, and the old solid furniture and tools they bought that way often outlasted anything new. A good table for pennies at an auction served 40 years. Number 4. Barter and the neighbor economy. When the cash dried up, folks fell back on the oldest trade there is. The eggs swapped for the milk, a day's sowing for a bushel of apples, the man who could fix an engine trading his hands for his rent. No bank stood in the middle of it. No fee was taken. No interest charged. It ran on trust and a handshake, and it kept whole communities fed when the dollar itself had near failed them. Number 3. The soda pop cake. This one sounds like a child made it up, but it is real, and the chemistry is sound. When a family was out of eggs and milk, a woman could still bake a cake by stirring a bottle of soda pop into the dry cake makings. The fizz, the carbonation, reacts with the soda in the batter and lifts the cake light without a single egg. Cola for a chocolate cake. Lemon soda for a yellow one. The scientists have since confirmed what she knew, that the bubbles do the work the eggs would have. A whole cake for the church social, made of what was in the cupboard. Number 2. The price book. The careful woman kept a little notebook in her purse, and in it, she wrote the price of every staple at every store. The flour here, the sugar there, the lard at the butcher. Over the weeks, the book showed her plain where each thing was cheapest, and she shopped by it and saved a good piece of her grocery money by simply knowing. The notebook cost a nickel and paid for itself the first trip. The coupon apps today do the same thing, but they also watch you and sell what they learn. Her notebook only ever saved her money and told no one. And number 1, the one they truly did not want. The one that got laws written against it. It was simply this: a family that grew its own food, kept its own hens, put up its own harvest, and traded with its neighbors, needed almost nothing from anyone. And that frightened the right people, because the suburbs were paved over the garden plots. The neighborhood rules were written to forbid the front yard vegetables and the backyard hens. In some towns, to this day, it is against the rule to grow food in your own front yard. Think on that. The most basic human act there is, growing your own supper. The thing every soul on earth did for 10,000 years was made against the rules in some places, because a self-feeding family is a poor customer. That is the trick they most wanted you to forget. So that is the one I most want you to remember. Now let me say it honest and plain, as I always will. Not one of these 35 will make you rich on its own, and a few save only a little. But that was never the point of them. Live together, day on day. They are the whole difference between a family that depends on the store for its every need, and one that can stand on its own 2 feet when it has to. And here is the truth the title points at, told straight. Nobody sat in a room and plotted to take these from you. It is just that there is no profit in teaching a man to need less, and great profit in teaching him to buy more. So the knowledge was let go, quietly, until your own grandmother's wisdom looked quaint and backward. It was never backward. It was freedom, and it is still here for the taking. So this week, do just one. Save the bacon grease in a tin. Set a green onion root in a jar of water. Bake a pan of lard biscuits. Or keep a little price book for a single week of shopping. Just one to start. And do it where your children or your grandchildren can see. And tell them why. Because that is exactly how this knowledge was lost. When one generation stopped showing the next. And it is exactly how we win it back. Tell me in the comments which of these 35 your own people did, and which one you had never once heard of before. And if your grandmother had a trick I did not name here, share it below, because those small bits of wisdom vanish from the world the moment nobody writes them down. I read every single one. Next time, since we have spoken of putting food by, I am going to show you the old way a family canned a whole summer garden safe and sound. The real method, the right way, so you can fill a pantry that carries you clear through to spring. It is the natural next step after today. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Keep the simple things close. They were never half so foolish as they looked. I am Earl Dean. I will see you next time.